You may have heard there is practically no maintenance for a Tesla Model 3. Well, I'm Frugal Tesla Guy, and we're going to see how much truth there is to that. When weighing out the pros and cons of purchasing an EV, the most popular topic of discussion is range and charging. But another topic of discussion is maintenance, or lack thereof. Now, over a year ago, I uploaded a video looking at the maintenance schedule for the Tesla Model 3 as recommended by Tesla. Now, this also happens to be the video that has the most views and comments on my channel. So when I discovered Tesla had updated their maintenance schedule, I thought it'd be a good idea to share that information as well. And it turns out there's even less maintenance than before. Now let's start with the original schedule for the Tesla Model 3. There were 4 different service intervals Tesla recommended. The first was to simply rotate the tires every 6,250 miles. The second was daily checks, like checking the charge level of the battery, checking the exterior lights, the horn, turn signals, and wipers, just to name a few. And although this was recommended, minus knowing the charge level of the battery, these were obviously things the average person wasn't going to do on a daily basis. The third was monthly checks, such as checking the mileage to determine whether or not the tires needed to be rotated, check the level of the windshield washer fluid, and check to make sure the AC is working properly. Now, the fourth was a little more complicated and, quite honestly, the most important one to pay attention to, and that was fluid replacement intervals. Now, Tesla at one point recommended you have the brake fluid replaced every 2 years and the battery coolant every 4 years. In my first video, I mentioned there were people who felt replacing the brake fluid every 2 years was a little excessive. Now, this was also the topic that received the most comments, with many people stating every 2 years is not excessive, and the brake fluid needs to be flushed and replaced on a regular basis for safety. Now, I also mentioned in my first video that when it came to the battery coolant, that was one I wasn't going to play around with. If Tesla recommended that I replace it every day, that's what I was going to do. After all, the battery is as important to an electric car as the engine is to a gas car and needs to be taken care of. The annual pricing didn't come cheap either. The first year maintenance check was $475, and quite honestly, the things that were checked didn't validate the high price tag. Now, the second year, which included the brake fluid replacement, was $725. Now, that also seems kind of steep. The third year was a repeat of the first year, which was another $475, and the fourth year included the brake fluid and battery coolant replacement for $850. Now, what's interesting is this maintenance plan was adopted from the Model S word for word and dollar for dollar. This was all very unattractive because even with the regular oil changes, it was less expensive to maintain a gas car. Then, not too long ago, Tesla revamped the maintenance schedule. They started with stating that your vehicle should generally be serviced on an as-needed basis, but then followed with a list of maintenance items and intervals. The daily and monthly checks didn't really change much, and the tire rotation schedule changed from every 6,250 miles to somewhere between 10,000 and 12,000 miles. They added changing your cabin air filter every 2 years and every 3 years if you opted for the HEPA filter. Now, they also recommended the AC desiccant bag replacement every 6 years. And for those that live in a winter climate requiring the roads to be salted, to have the brake calipers cleaned and lubricated every 12,500 miles. However, there were some big changes to the fluid checks and changing intervals. Now, let's start with the brakes. Tesla now recommends that you have the brake fluid checked every 2 years and to only replace as necessary. And here's where things get interesting. Tesla states that the battery coolant does not need to be replaced for the life of the car under most circumstances. That, to me, was a big surprise and, quite honestly, a relief, because now the overall maintenance costs have gone way down, and it can be honestly said that not only is there significantly less maintenance for a Tesla, but it's also significantly less expensive. We'll start off with a gallon of washer fluid, which will cost between $10 and $20 depending on what climate you live in. Now, topping it off is as easy as opening the front, untwisting the cap, and pouring it in. As far as I'm concerned, you should not be paying for tire rotations. Most companies will rotate your tires for free as long as you purchase the tires from them. The company I use rotated the tires on my Model 3 even though the tires came with the car. So I won't even add that to the price of maintenance. The cabin air filter will only set you back about $35 directly from Tesla, but you can get it cheaper from Amazon. However, if you decided to go with the more expensive HEPA filter, it will set you back about $100, but will last as long as 3 years, as opposed to the 2 years with the less expensive option. Now onto the brakes. Originally, Tesla wanted you to flush out and change the brake fluid every 2 years. However, they updated that to flushing only if necessary. Now, one of the reasons they made this change is due to the fact that Teslas use regenerative braking, and the regular disc brakes are rarely used as a result. Now, after calling my local Tesla service center, they quoted me a price of $215 for a brake flush and replacement. Now, that does seem a little steep because on average for ICE vehicles, a brake flush typically costs between $80 and $120. Now, the Tesla service technician did say most any shop could do the brake flush, but since Tesla has all of the certified gear to do it, you can rest assured it's being done properly. Now, over a year ago, I had asked a brake shop if they would do it, and they said they wouldn't feel comfortable and suggested I have Tesla do it. And before Tesla takes any action, they check to make sure there isn't any moisture or deposits in the brake fluid. Now, the beauty is, you can do these tests yourself. This is a brake fluid tester, and it checks to see if there are unsafe levels of moisture in your brake fluid. Now, the one I purchased was $24 on Amazon. In order to use this, you're going to have to take off the access panel in order to get to the brake fluid reservoir. Now, you simply turn it on, select the type of brake fluid you have, and in this case, Tesla uses DOT3 as stated on the brake fluid cap, and then dip it in the brake fluid. Now, if there's more than 2% moisture content in your brake fluid, it's time to flush and replace it. But in my case, there's less than 1%. Now, to make sure that this tester works, I also dipped it in purely water and washed it right up to the highest level. Test 1 complete. Now you need to check for corrosion in the brake fluid. Now, the test strips can be a little on the pricey side, but the best price I could find was 15 test strips for 20 bucks. Now, it also includes testing the radiator coolant, but obviously isn't needed for a Tesla. This is also a very easy test to do. You take one of the testing strips and dip it into the brake fluid. It takes about 30 to 60 seconds for the test, and it's as easy as matching it on the chart to see what level of corrosion you have. My levels are very much on the safe side, and I have nothing to worry about, and saved myself $215 minus the cost of the moisture tester and the corrosion testing strips, of course. Now, this is probably a routine I'll go through once a year and maybe more often if I think about it. Up until the point I started researching for this video, I had no idea what an air conditioning desiccant bag was. Now, the Tesla service technician explained it to me by using the do not eat desiccant bag you'll find in, say, a bag of beef jerky as an example. Now, it's the same concept with AC because moisture is not an AC unit's friend, so it uses desiccant airbags to absorb any moisture in the unit. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this bag needs to be replaced every 6 years for the Model 3. However, it's every 4 years for the Model S and 2 years for the X. This is not only important to make sure the AC unit is working properly for your comfort, but it's also used to help to keep the battery cool. For this reason alone, I'll be following this to the T. Now, I did ask the Tesla technician the price to have the desiccant airbag replaced in the Model 3, and since they haven't been around for 6 years, he didn't know for sure, but used the $240 price tag for the Model S. So let's take a look at the overall price to maintain a Tesla Model 3 for 6 years. Replace the cabin air filter every 2 years at $35 each, and that comes out to $105. For a HEPA filter, that's every 3 years at $100 each, and that comes out to $200. Have the brake fluid flushed and replaced at least once in 6 years, $215. Brake fluid tester and testing strips, $45. Top off washer fluid, gallon of washer fluid, $15. Replace the AC desiccant bag once every 6 years, $240. Grand total, $620 and $720 if you use a HEPA filter. Not bad, considering not too long ago, the price tag for 5 years of maintenance for a Tesla was $3,000. Hardly the EV savings everyone was raving about. Now, some may criticize Tesla for scaling back on their maintenance routine, but the new schedule seems much more realistic. There were items on the old list that seemed pointless and way overpriced. And although a brake fluid flush and replacement will cost more to have it done at a Tesla service center, the lower cost and less maintenance overall more than makes up for it. In the end, I feel as though this is a more realistic maintenance schedule for the Tesla Model 3 and hopefully will make purchasing a Tesla much more appealing. What do you think? Is the latest Tesla maintenance schedule sufficient, or are they scaling back because they can't handle the increased volume of customers? I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section below. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you found it useful or a good source of information, don't forget to click the like button and be sure to click the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Well, thank you all so much for watching, and stay positively charged.